Hey, you know, the past few days have seen yet another big teachers union strike, this time in Chicago, replete with angry sign-wielding educators and fawning pop media coverage of their supposedly noble sacrifice. But now, thanks to the internet that was sprouted from one of Al Gore's ribs, we actually have some good news, a positive, to report from this because we can circumvent the pop media. Now, because we can share information, people are learning that mere hours after the strike began, private initiative actually stepped in to fill in the gap, caring for and teaching kids without taxes or government compulsion. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV, and right now I get to share some great news that reminds everyone about real American history. Now, as you know, tax-funded teachers in Chicago are on strike, demanding, of course, more cash, benefits, and even subsidized housing.
Well, the union wants the school board to put in writing the promises about smaller class sizes and hiring additional staff. The district says that it's already proposed $19,000 in a pay raise.
All in a city that in 2014 ranked third highest nationally for total spending, yet according to chalkbeat.org, last year saw nearly half of its primary and secondary schools failed to meet the state threshold for performance, making some of them possible targets for state intervention. But now, thanks to the web freeing us from the big government propaganda of the dinosaur media, we're learning that as this inefficient tax-funded system again fails, private markets are handling the job. As Carrie McDonald reports for the Foundation for Economic Education, as the Chicago strike shows, when government schooling is not the centerpiece of a child's life, community organizations step up to provide support and care. Museums, churches, libraries, and a multitude of civic nonprofits are opening their doors to children displaced by the teacher strike, and public parks and playgrounds abound.
I'm here at Marillac St. Vincent. This is a community center on the west side where staff has vowed not to turn away a single CPS caregiver. The Marillac Social Center has regular children and family services too, so you can imagine it was bustling. Extra volunteers, we are told, are on standby at the center here and at the St. Vincent de Paul Center up in Lincoln Park. The goal is to provide peace of mind.
Now, the YMCA has opened 11 locations to welcome kids. Science organizations are offering programs. Area gyms are opening up and offering adult supervision. And the Boys and Girls Club of Chicago, as well as a similar but separate organization, the Neighborhood Boys and Girls Club, are open all day for children affected by the strike. Many arts organizations throughout Chicago are offering special programming for students in a range of topics, from theater to dance to visual art. Now, why is this important? It's not to rub their redundancy in the faces of teachers, some of whom possibly deserve more money than they're actually getting from the government system. It's to show that this Chicago private phenomenon is actually a strand in an unbroken rope that runs through American history. It shows us that economics and morality are linked, and that the very arguments collectivists make in favor of their government-run, coercion-based, tax-funded school system are their own downfall. We're told that compulsory government education in the form of compulsory payment and attendance shows that people care about children. But this is actually self-defeating. If people care, then why do they have to be forced to pay? And why do kids have to be forced to attend? If people care, no force is needed at all. And that's what's so good about this news from Chicago. Not only is compulsion not needed, it never has been needed in U.S. history. As McDonald writes, indeed, this is how education worked prior to the mid-19th century passage of compulsory schooling laws that narrowed a broad definition of education into the singular concept of forced schooling. To go more in depth, the legendary scholar Dr. Sam Blumenfeld, who I'm pleased to say was a really good friend of mine, did extensive research on this, and he showed that until the late 1800s, most Americans were educated privately, and the literacy level was statistically as high as it is today, while the qualitative content of what was considered literate was even higher. As William Jasper wrote in 1986 about this phenomenon and about Dr. Blumenfeld's remarkable work, when a small group of reformers in 1817 petitioned the Boston town meeting to extend the common schools to the primary level, a subcommittee was appointed, chaired by distinguished architect Charles Bulfinch, to survey the city's educational needs. The Bulfinch report, says education historian Samuel Blumenfeld, revealed that, quote, an astonishing 96% of the town's children were attending school, and the 4% that did not had charity schools to attend if their parents wanted them to. Thus, there was no justification at all for the creation of a system of public primary schools, and Bulfinch reported as much to the school committee, which accepted the subcommittee's recommendation. End quote. And Jasper also notes research by David Tyack and Elizabeth Hansot. One sign of the effectiveness of the many forms of education in the United States was that Americans were among the most literate people in the world. In the 1840 census, about 90% of white adults were listed as literate. A recent study of a sample of the 1860 census shows that 94% of free males were literate, and among these, the older men were only slightly less literate than the younger ones, indicating that instruction had been widespread even early in the 19th century. And Jasper adds, John Adams remarked in 1765 regarding our educational attainment, quote, a native of America who cannot read or write is as rare in appearance as a comet or an earthquake, end quote. Which shows the great ties that we have to American history and shows that parents actually care for their kids. And in fact, market participants enter the market to offer services at better and better prices, competitively driving the prices down in the exact opposite direction of what happens in the compulsory government school system. It's a long chain, a thread, a lifeline, you might say, that we can hold on to, going back from John Adams to Sam Blumenfeld to even those people in Chicago today who are voluntarily taking care of kids. And heck, it's a lifeline that some of those kids in Chicago might need to grab. Thanks so much for joining us in this exploration into history, contemporary stories out of Chicago, and sharing some philosophy. I really appreciate being able to give you this information, especially since I appreciated the work of Sam Blumenfeld so much. Rest in peace, Sam. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe and to share these videos with as many of your friends as you can. And watch out for social media because sometimes they make it difficult to share. For MRC-TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.